The National Veterans Memorial and Museum began with a vision from the late Senator John Glenn, who understood the value of telling and sharing the story of our veterans. From the initial view, the architecture impresses upon visitors the importance of what lies within. Seeming to rise organically from the earth, the building itself is a symbol of our nation's veterans and their resilient spirit and unending commitment to making this country stronger. Once inside the museum, visitors embark on a narrative journey, following exhibitions that focus on the servicemen and women and their families. Individual stories and shared experiences are illustrated through personal artifacts, quotes, letters, photographs, and powerful films of veterans telling their unique story in their own words. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new home of the brave. Plan your visit today.
Good morning and welcome to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum here in Columbus, Ohio. My name is Colonel Retired Bill Butler. I'm the Chief of Staff here at the museum. On behalf of our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Ferder, I'd like to welcome everybody to our fourth virtual Rally Point. Rally Point was started here at the museum on the first Saturday of every month to bring veterans together and their supporters to build relationships, share ideas about veteran-centric topics, and educate one another about the resources our veterans may need and how to navigate those resource requirements. We are open. We continue to provide virtual programs and events. We are strong. We connect and support veterans with one another and to communities, and we impact lives. We started our virtual programs and events in March, and I encourage everyone to check those out on our Facebook and YouTube pages. We had two separate programs on resilience, one with Gold Star spouse and Army veteran Master Sergeant retired Jennifer Laredo Ballou. She's an Army Master Resilience Trainer, small business owner, and life coach. The other was with Major retired Josh Montz. He shared his incredible story about how he was shot and died in combat, was brought back to life by the medical team, and is now thriving and paying it forward. Dr. Teresa Larson from Movement Prescription and Mr. Matt Doc Campbell from the VA both led discussions on wellness and whole health. And then Colonel Retired Adam Rock from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Hire Our Heroes Foundation, and Major General Retired Paulette Risher from Still Serving Veterans discussed veteran hiring and employment considerations. So those have all been great events. And our most recent event featured Captain Retired Josh Payton. He shared his lessons learned on starting a successful nonprofit and small business, the Veteran Golfers Association, to assist other aspiring veteranpreneurs. All told, our virtual events and programs have reached over 2.5 million people and counting. We've had over 40 million print, radio, and other media impressions since we've gone virtual. Today, we have a great program to talk about the reality and facts of COVID-19, leadership lessons, and an empowering story about breaking barriers. Lieutenant General Retired Nadja West is a good friend of the museums and an inspiring leader. She retired recently as a senior medical officer in the United States Army, the Surgeon General of the Army. She's led men and women in high-stakes, stressful life and death situations. She's an agent of change and has transformed large and small organizations. She's a great example for anyone striving to be the best version of themselves. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Ferder. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Bill. And welcome everyone to our virtual rally point here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. I am Lieutenant General Mike Ferder, U.S. Army retired, and we're in our second year here at the NVMM. We always say it's a great day to be a veteran, and especially great to be with those who care so much about veterans. And we really have a special program today, and it's a great honor to welcome Nadja West, my friend and colleague and battle buddy, and just one of those people that we felt we wanted to have the opportunity to introduce to our audience and to hear from today. So Nadja, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Well, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate the opportunity.
So let's just start with an introduction. Tell us about yourself. Tell the audience about your active duty time and how you came to join West Point and graduate, and we'll start with that.
Wow, that's and I'll keep it short because I know we want to have time for the discussion. But I'm proud to be an Army brat. So my dad was in the military, joined in 1939. And stayed for 33 years because he saw the organization of the military as one that really was a way to unify the country because it was segregated when he joined. But he stayed because he saw the promise and the evolution of our Army. And so that really planted the seed, hearing his war stories about the military, that I definitely wanted to join. And then I had examples in front of me, my brothers and sisters, all 12 of us, and so there's 12, yes, all of us adopted, great parents, story for another day. But my older brothers and sisters were either WACs, three of my sisters were WACs in Women's Army Corps. One of my sisters was a WAF in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. And then the one next youngest to me, my sister, was joined the Navy just as they were bringing the Navy together to have men and women in the same service. So she joined the Navy, which we have a lot of fun during Army Navy Week. And then I have a brother who graduated from West Point, class of '76. And so all of those influenced me into serving, and I'm really glad I did. What a great example my dad had, my older brothers and sisters, and so that's what started me on my path.
You know, when we announced and marketed that this event was forthcoming, one of our great friends, Jerry Polanski from Berlin, Germany, the Berlin Brats group, she said, "Wow, I didn't meet Nadja, but I know her big brother." And so it is another small world. We lived in Berlin from '67 to '71, and still remain those contacts, especially now through Facebook groups.
Absolutely.
And all that. So when you think no one's watching, once again, they're staring and they already know you.
Yeah, my big brother, real quick story about my brother Pete. So she's talking about Pete, retired, command sergeant major in the Army, air defender. He was in the Nike Hercules days. You know how long ago that was. But I remember taking him to my kindergarten show and tell one day with his uniform because I wanted to show off my brother, my older brother. So that's another great influence, my brother Pete. And if he's listening, hey Pete, down in Dallas, Texas.
I hope so. Thank him for our freedom and for his service also. Well, you probably entered the United States Military Academy in about 1978, 79, and at that point, when you graduated, it was the third class at the United States Military Academy to graduate women. Tell us about that journey a little bit.
Well, it was really, looking back, I think when you have time to reflect in retrospect, I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciated the opportunity then. I didn't know what I was really getting into, even though my brother graduated in '76. He was the one who really encouraged me to join or to apply because they were just accepting women. I was going to go ROTC. I knew I wanted to join, but that wasn't an option when I was first thinking about it. And so, and I knew it was hard. I knew it was tough. I didn't have any misgivings or lack of expectations about that. But I really didn't realize what it would be like. Again, just go back. I was 17 years old during that time. I wasn't really thinking about making a statement or changing history or anything like that. I just wanted to join the Army, and this was a great way of doing it. So it was really a culture shock. Again, went to an all-girls Catholic high school, really small school in Maryland. To go to a military academy like that was really a culture shock. But it was one where I really value, obviously, but I really value what I learned there. It really increased my confidence, things that I never thought I'd be able to do. And it really set the tone, I think, for me to be able to be successful. In the future, just during those times, those formative years of learning responsibility, reinforcing the Army values that my parents taught me, as a young kid growing up. And so it was an interesting environment. It was challenging, but I think it was really one that I cherish and value.
Yeah, the little red flag behind me says reject their rejection. And so I would imagine that there were moments. So for our young men and women out there who are veterans who've recently transitioned and they're starting up either veteran-owned businesses or those that are going to school, there'll be some ups and downs. So give us some insights on rejecting rejection.
That's a great phrase, Mike, and I'm going to start using that. I'm going to borrow that from you because a lot of times you don't realize. Again, going back, when I think back just at West Point time frame, 17-year-old self, I was so concerned about what other people thought, what other people, and there were some. I mean, the last all-male class of '79, there were several. Not most, not all, of course, but there were several that made it very clear that they did not want women at the academy, and that they were bent on running us all out before they graduated. Again, very few, but that's enough if you come across one, that's not a pleasant experience.
Yes.
And if I had just remembered then, or told myself, hey, I won't say it's a game, but I shouldn't let someone else's, thoughts influence me. But my year-old self, almost 60-year-old self now realizes I should have just said, that's your idea, not mine. I'm not going to take on your negativity or your thoughts about me. That's easier said than done, but I think that's an important lesson to learn, is not to let people do that. And I'll tell you a real quick story where I almost didn't apply to medical school because of naysayers and people who were telling me, that's hard. It's why do you think you can get into medical school? And I ran into a West Point graduate when I was visiting my dad, who was sick in the hospital. And I mentioned to him that I was interested in going to medical school, but I didn't think I could get in, and it's really hard and all that. And he looked at me, he goes, you're about to start your senior year at West Point. You've made it through all that. Your grades are good, right? I said, yeah, they're pretty good. And he goes, then why are you selling yourself short? And who's telling you these things? And I said, well, some of my classmates. And he goes, your classmates who haven't gone to medical school? He goes, well, I went to medical school. I went to West Point and medical school, and you can do it. Just go for it, because the worst that they can say is you're not accepted. But don't sell yourself short. Don't listen to those negative naysayers. Let the people who know what they're doing as far as looking at applicants make that decision. And don't make that decision by taking yourself out of the race. And so I think that's an example I would say is those who are naysayers and those who would reject you, just realize that you have to rise above that and rely on those who are in your corner and encouraging you. Because I had a lot of those too. And that's why I'm here today. Like I mentioned, the one doctor I ran into when I was visiting my dad in the hospital.
Yeah, for sure. And, we're a complete startup here at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and to develop an attitude towards innovation and creativity, we have to tell our team all the time, I got your back. Go ahead and try it, and let them. And if you're entrepreneurial, then you're really experimental in many ways. And people will say, well, that's not the way it's done here. And I say the only one that likes change is a baby with a wet diaper, and everyone else resistant. But I also like the way that you said what I say. Your opinion's really none of my business. And so if you feel strongly about that, then go ahead and feel strongly about that. I don't have to take it on. I like the way you said that. That was really, really awesome. And then there are going to be people that place obstacles or perceived obstacles whenever we aspire. So how do you, as a person, make obstacles stepping stones? How do you get up on top and go?
Well, I think part of it is the attitude, like you mentioned, looking at obstacles as opportunities. Because, and again, I'm not in a Pollyannish type of way. I mean, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, there are people who put some serious obstacles, but looking at them as challenges. For me, I'm not proselytizing, but I'm a person of faith, and so it's kind of the old saying of, when a door closes, a window opens. And so looking at challenges to see, is there, how can I, bolster myself, and how can I use this as a challenge to either build resilience or to, or to find a way to really to get over it. Because most people will find that most challenging times are the times that they experience the most growth.
Yes.
They really learned more about themselves. They learned that they could really be a lot more, they had more in them than they thought. And that's kind of going back to West Point, the obstacle course, things like that, which I look at it and I'll never be able to do that. So I already started off saying, I'll never be able to do that. Okay, just try. And so I think using those as opportunities and trying to determine if, and again, it's not to be Pollyannish, but try to enlist the help of those, or enlist the assistance of those who give you positive energy and can be encouraging. You'd be surprised in some of the corners and areas where you find that. There may not be people who look like you, sound like you, or even are in the same, line of work that you're in, or the same area of expertise that you have. And you'd be surprised if you reach out to others to say, hey, can you assist me with this? You'd probably be very surprised at the answer you get. Again, back to that example of the doctor. He was a white male that said, you can do it. So it wasn't someone who looked like me, who probably had my experiences, but he, saw a fellow cadet. So the one thing we did have in common is that we were, West Point, he was a graduate and I was a, rising graduate. And that was a person who just, out of the blue, motivated me and encouraged me. And I think looking for people to assist with that from areas you may not expect is one way to overcome obstacles.
Yeah, and our audience doesn't know it, but your son is an artilleryman, and when the tube is over to the right or left, it's called cant, and so we got to get the cant out of the tube. And we like to say that the only cant in the military is on a mortar or an artillery tube, and everything else is possible, right?
That's true.
Oh,
hey, I'm learning all these great things, Mike. I'm really, I should be taking these notes down. So
okay, more to follow for sure. Hey, we do have parents out there who may not have any military background or have never thought about it, but give just a few nuggets on applying to the academies and again the make someone take no approach to doing that, because it can be a daunting view of things. But what would you say about the service academy and applying for that?
Well, so I'm really biased. I mean, everyone, I know Logan and my daughter Sydney, who just graduated from law school here, they're afraid to bring friends by because I'm always recruiting, if they're within the age group, about either the military or the academy for youngsters, because it's such a great opportunity. What I would tell parents is don't have a narrow view of what the military is. Sometimes parents are afraid to let their kids apply because they're worried about their safety, or they get their knowledge from video games, Call of Duty or movies about the military. And I think learning about it. I tell people when I mention I'm in the medical field, first they're surprised. Some of them are surprised. They never knew that they were actually doctors in the military that were Army doctors. And then when I tell them there's over 120 occupational specialties just in the Army Medical Department alone. I mean, my husband was a medevac pilot, so he flew helicopters, saving lives. You have all types, veterinarians, psychologists. When I tell them, open your aperture because there's more to the military. So first learn about it. And I think the goarmy.com is really good because it tells you all the different occupational specialties. And then for the academy specifically, I tell folks, don't take yourself out of the race before you start. Go to some of the camps. They have these wonderful summer camps. In fact, my son went to a track camp. And again, it's not one of those, it's like 3 or 4 days where they have track, volleyball, and they have it from, I think, age 7 to 17.
Oh,
So
wow.
it gets the kids just ideas of, they're not going to make them star athletes. So they learn about what it's like. They live in the barracks. So they say, okay, here's what the especially for West Point, here's what the campus looks like. Here's what the life of a cadet is. You go to the dining facility there. And so it just gives them an idea. So take them to one of the camps, and they're very, not free. I think they're very low cost. And then go on the websites to look at some of those leader opportunities when they're, juniors and seniors, because those are some really good opportunities to learn about it. And then what I would say is get prepared. High school is in my opinion, it's kind of too late once you're in 9th or 10th grade. It's not really too late, but if you really haven't been preparing yourself for studying in the right courses, I would say look online, because it has a little on the westpoint.edu. They talk about, information for freshmen, for sophomores, for different age groups of where you can start learning about it and getting yourself prepared physically. Because at the end of the day, it's physical. Being a soldier is a physical thing. Sailor, Airman, Marine, Coast Guard, any of the branches. And so learn what's required. Even if you're an athlete, if you're a lacrosse player, if you're a volleyball player, you're a strong athlete, but those may not translate to some of the things you have to do for the physical fitness test. And there's a new test now, and look at the requirements for them. And so doing leg lifts, doing a drag, a pulley drag of certain things, deadlifts, may not be the kind of things you're doing in your sport. So learn what those physical attributes are. And of course, it goes without saying, your academic excellence. Make sure you understand what kind of the pre-college courses you need to take. And so that's why I say start 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, getting them prepared. And then being learning about character building type of, activities. Joining, clubs and things where you are serving others, volunteer in your community, volunteer for leadership positions, because that's what you're going to be doing in the military. And so you can feel free to stop me, Mike, because I'll get on a roll and keep going.
That's all right.
But those are some of the things, and especially what I would say that builds your confidence is the physical fitness. If you don't know how to run, then get out there and start, a program safely to run, because physical fitness is extremely important. And as a medical professional, 70% of our young people today in the nation, would not meet the fitness standards to join the military service because of either chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes or things like that, or just plain obesity. They don't meet and I'm not trying to body shame, I'm just saying for the medical definition of being overweight or obese, are things that are, standards and easily measurable. And those things can, first of all, not be good for your health long term, but it might prohibit you from being able to, to join the services or go to the academy. So physical fitness, being, fit in athletics, and of course, education, being really good in your students, civic leadership type things, and then visit the academy if you get a chance over the summer, or they have a lot of things where you can spend one day with the cadets during the academic year.
I think so. And I would venture a guess that many colleges, West Point included, and probably the Citadel in Charleston, where I went, they are having virtual tours and virtual interactions as well during these days.
Right. That's a very good point. Yes. So
start there, but boots on the ground always works. We're soldiers, through and through. So getting there can be fantastic. Shifting just a little bit towards leadership ideas. You, through your years of service, led all kinds of units, were in all kinds of organizations and hospitals under often trying conditions and certainly dynamic conditions. What was the most challenging thing you experienced through a leadership perspective?
I think, there, of course, each organization brings their own challenges, but I think the thread, I would say, and pick the one that's the most challenging, I think all leaders know, is communication. We all think we're great communicators, and that everyone hears what we're saying, understands what we're saying and what we want them to do. And we're transmitting our vision and our mission clearly and in an articulate manner. We all want to believe that, but we really need to make sure, that it's disseminating throughout the organization. And so I would say that's a challenge, especially the larger the organization gets. My first command was at Fort Eustis, Virginia, the McDonald Army Hospital. Then it was a hospital, and there were probably about 600 people in my entire command there at the hospital, and there was a clinic at Fort Story, and then one at Virginia Beach. So I pretty much could know everyone in the command, pretty well, and so even then it was difficult communicating, making sure that everything in my staff was hearing, that each one of the clinic and in the directors in the outlying areas understood what that was. But then imagine fast forward to Fort Bragg, Launchstool, the Europe Region Medical Command, and then MedCom. If you take all components, that's 140,000 people spread all over the globe, and the communication is really important because you want to make sure that people understand your vision, and you have subordinate multiple echelons below that can help translate that. But you also want to make sure that they don't change your tone. I used to always tell them, don't change my tone, because what I'm saying, I want to make sure that you are translating it in a way that everybody understands. So I think communicating your vision and making sure that it stays consistent as it travels throughout the organization is a challenge.
I think it is. And another thing that we often say or hear around here is they don't care what you know till they know that you care. And but
Absolutely.
I've never heard it said it so well as you just said, don't change my tone, because there's bedside manner in a hospital, and then there's technical experts, and it's good to have a little bit of both, especially when someone's concerned. And I believe it translates directly to small businesses throughout, to big businesses, to being in a corporation, that being an effective communicator and showing that you care first, and get to the problem solving second, will always lead you to successful outcomes. What do you think?
I tell you, Mike, you're absolutely right. And one of my favorite leadership quotes is from Colin Powell, who says that, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but to paraphrase, but he says, the day that your soldiers stop bringing you the problems is the day you stop leading. He said they either conclude that either that you can't help them or that you just don't care, and either is a failure of leadership. And so it's, the competence, of course, you need to be competent and know that you can help them. You have the skill set to help them or lead them or help them with their problem, and you have to care about them. Mm-hmm. And if they feel that you can't do either, then they're not going to bring you your problems. And so I tell people, when soldiers bring you your problems, rejoice, because that means they think that you are someone who can help them and someone who cares about them. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else and just bypass you because they know they're not going to waste their time. And soldiers, as you know, Mike, soldiers know if you truly care, or if they feel that you are just using them as items to get to your next job or anything like that. Soldiers are very perceptive in that, and they know when you're really, and they'll forgive a lot if they know that you really care, and they'll do anything for you, in an appropriate and in a way of integrity, to do whatever they can to get the mission done, if they know that you truly care about them.
They really do. They carry us on their shoulders to our success.
Absolutely.
So we're here at the National Veterans Memorial Museum with Lieutenant General retired Nadja West, the 44th Surgeon General of the United States Army. We're discussing leadership, and we're discussing how she was a history-breaking individual to be the first African-American woman to be a general in the Army, and first African-American woman 2-star and 3-star, if I'm correct. And we also, as the National Veterans Memorial Museum, we have the title that we've been signed into law. It's been pushed through Congress, yet we receive no federal funds. So great programs such as this come by way of the support of our donors, sponsors, and members. And you can go to nationalvmm.org and join as a member today, and or support us in many other ways. out there. We have great supporters, and we're super strong and super moving out. So Nadja, let's talk a little bit medically about this thing called a pandemic and COVID-19, and just give us some insights for our veterans out there and their family members on things that you're seeing, the journey we've traveled thus far, and where you think we'll be 6 months from now.
Well, as a medical professional, seeing the pandemic and seeing how we're responding to it, what's happening in the world, it kind of is one where it's kind of deja vu. If you look at 1918, when we had the global influenza pandemic, also in the midst of when we were in a world war, and so that really helped, spread the disease a lot more. And looking at the numbers back then, it was either low estimates say 20 million, but some estimates say between 50 and 100 million people worldwide. That just sounds mind-boggling. Succumbed, died due to the pandemic in 1918 to 1920, that time period. And some of the lessons learned, or I guess some people say they're lessons observed until we actually learn something from them. We have improved and come a long way in healthcare and in treatment and things like that. Vaccines or a platform, or basically the ability to have vaccines, for diseases once they're discovered and developed. And so, looking back and then looking to see what's happening now, we're kind of back in the same position of what do we do when you have a novel virus that we don't have countermeasures for. And then how do you counteract that? So what we're seeing now is some of the things I think the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and our authoritative sources of public health information are there. They're coming to the forefront. I think initially that was really difficult to get one clear message of how to counteract this virus, because there were so many different sources, people, well-meaning, trying to come out with all these different things of what we could do, because it's frightening when you see people dying and knowing that there's no treatment or prevention. And so I think early on it was, not necessarily a coordinated effort to get individuals good information out there, again, because it was changing so rapidly. How did it spread? What were the symptoms? Could, asymptomatic, carrying, do kids get it? Do they not? All these different things that were out there. Until we finally have I think, a codified way of moving forward. And it's back to the basics, believe it or not, Mike, back to the basics of, simple hygiene that, it sounds kind of archaic in 2020 that, washing your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds, managing your secretions, sneezing or coughing into your elbow and not having your plume spew out into the public. And now, wearing face coverings. I know that was, plus minus wearing masks or face coverings. And again, that's just to manage your secretions. If you've ever seen those slow motion photos of someone sneezing or coughing and seeing all the particles and how far they go out, it really tells you there are ways to spread things, and this is just kind of a way to limit spread. And so I think, as we're getting towards a vaccine, and I think we're extremely close. I mean, this is unprecedented how quickly once from identification of the causative agent to having a countermeasure in the form of a vaccine, how quickly that's coming, I think is amazing. It used to take, decades to get there. Now we're really close in multiple areas of getting something, I think, in the next several months. I mean, I'm not going to be able to predict, but, relative time frame, it's going to be months, not years, I think, when we finally have something that's going to be out there. But I would tell our veterans real quick, what you can do is be as healthy as you can, because you see that it affects people that have chronic diseases. And it's really, disheartening, because those that are ill or not, that don't have access to good health care to be able to maintain their health are at higher risk. So maintaining your health the best way you can for young veterans, all of our veterans, going onto the CDC website, the Centers for Disease Control, because they have products that tells you the latest. So this is an example. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
But this is one, and you don't want to see all these, this is one on the hospitalization rates and characterization of children under age 18, because when it first came out, the kids may not get it. So they have these things, and you don't want to read all the scientific part, but they have a summary box where it just says,
That's great.
it says, what do we know? What did we know before this? What does this new information tell us? And what is the public health information recommendations? So I would just say go on there periodically just to see what's new in the CDC recommendations, and then really maintaining yourself. Wash your hands, face coverings when you go out, maintaining that social distancing, and really taking this seriously until we can get a vaccine for that.
Excellent. And all of our veterans, they've got that Spider-Man tingly on the back of their neck. They've been in places before. And we sort of view it the same way. The mask is just a seatbelt. You put it on now, you don't even think about it anymore. It was a big deal when in the 60s and 70s. But we wear a seatbelt, wear a mask. And then likewise, if you're going somewhere and it just looks nasty, don't go in there. There's an IED called the pandemic waiting for you in there. And so just stay away. And I really do love your comment on be well. And no dramatic super change needs to occur in anyone's life. But, just go out and walk, let it happen. Most of us have been stuck in a stigma where we knew what PT was. And if we didn't give it all at PT, then we felt we were slacker, and Dan Allen or General Austin or someone's going to say how far did you run and how fast. But actually, just walk with your bride or friends or with a cup of coffee, and it will take care of a lot of things for you. Let's see. Looks like I have a question here. So any idea about the extreme differences in how it affects people's asymptomatic, symptomatic, mild, extreme? Any thoughts on that?
Again, so there's still looking at how the disease is manifested in different populations. I mean, it's not just your standard upper respiratory type symptoms like you think with the cold or flu. You get stuffy nose, you get cough, fever, headache, chills. They're seeing a lot of strange things, especially in our younger people, like blood clots, right? Pulmonary embolism, vascular type things. And in children, they're finding that they may have the virus. It may not affect them, but they can pass it. I mean, anyone can do that. But it's again, going on those websites to see, as the research is out there and more cases are gathered, they can give more definitive recommendations and thoughts on that. But mild, moderate, and severe, we're seeing, unfortunately, in certain populations that there's a greater, they share a greater burden of the disease, both in severe illness and in deaths.
Yeah.
And I think it's uncovering a lot of disparities that we're seeing in our nation on access to care in certain areas. There are a lot of healthcare deserts in areas that are like right here near DC where I live. I mean, right in the shadow of the Capitol building, there are some neighborhoods that don't have healthcare. They don't have grocery stores to get fresh fruits and vegetables. So I think all those things can impact certain individuals more, because if you don't have basic health care, you don't have the proper diet, then you do get things like hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. If all you have access to is fast foods, and all you can afford is fast foods, then it's that's just a cycle that you can keep going back to see where does this all start. And when you see in some underserved areas, children, 5th graders, so 5th grade, that's 10, 11-year-olds that are on antihypertensives. They are on blood pressure medicines like old people or older people. That's unheard of. Endocrinologists are seeing things in children that used to be in people over age 50. So it starts young, and this cycle of chronic disease, I think, impacts people in certain areas more, and it's due to access to healthcare, good diets, education about exercise, and things like that.
Thanks.
I hope that answered. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it's very, very good. And we all cannot boil the ocean. We all can't save the world, but we can impact the world around us. And for all of our viewers out there, often when you get to be my age, you go from a supervisor of your kids to a consultant. And so all of you out there are consultants in somebody's life. And so pass on this great advice on just good, healthy activity to the greatest extent possible. Eat well, rest well, and show moderation and all the fun stuff as well. And you can't go wrong there. I wanted to ask you, we're going to do a series called the Inspired Leadership Youth series. We want to reach out to the underserved and the overserved kids of our community, and give them contact with veterans, police, fire, teachers in a forum where we can talk about inequity, inequality, and also I think has to go, the third leg of that stool is misunderstanding. And so we're going to do that in November. Montel Williams is going to be a person who helps us in this process. And then we'll build it out as a series, maybe twice a year, maybe quarterly, with a camp here at the NVMM next summer, again, with athletes and fun and activities. But the idea is really that to get these groups together, because when they do get to know the other side of it, when they do get to speak to each other, they find probably, as Francis Hesselbein, the great leadership guru, would tell us, that there's more in common than there's more difference, and there can be trust. But what are your thoughts as you see these things? You've been a trailblazer. You've had to fight through obstacles to create opportunities, but all that's happening in America today. Give us some thoughts, please.
Well, where to begin, Mike? I tell you, you're absolutely right. I think I'll focus on that one point you mentioned about an understanding. And I go back to 1939 when my dad joined the Army. It was segregated at the time. And Fort Huachuca, Arizona is where all the colored troops, that's what they called them at the time, the colored troops were sent for their basic training. And the white cadre initially thought that was a punishment tour, right? Why do we have to train these people? And my dad said that he saw a transition. And again, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was, like Pollyanna, show this was great, rainbows and unicorns, everybody was great. But he said he saw the hearts of some of his cadre change when they had a chance to deal with the soldiers, because a lot of them hadn't dealt with blacks in any type of environment except in a role where they were usually walled off in their communities, or if they had any at all, they were not, they didn't interact. Again, with segregation, you saw what the environment was back in the 1930s. And so, but he saw their hearts change because they had to interface with them on a one-on-one level. They were teaching them how to march, teaching them how to fire their weapons, teaching them the skills of being a soldier. And with that one-on-one interaction, they began to see this was not a homogeneous group of just black people. These were soldiers. Some could get it right away. Some had 2 left feet, right? Couldn't march. He told them left face, right. Some were really good, sharpshooters and got it. I mean, so they said, hey, this is a, heterogeneous group of people, just like everyone else. What a concept. And that's what my dad loved about it. That's why he stayed for 33 years, because easily he could have said, why am I sticking around in this environment where we're not wanted? And so I think it takes learning about one-on-one. And in fact, there was a great article in the Army magazine talking about, the segregated war during one of the battles in the Korean War, about the segregated unit. And it was just interesting to look back at how the thoughts were. People were getting slaughtered and they were worried about putting black troops in with white troops. It was just ridiculous. So when you think back, and now you see, it's soldiers of all types. I mean, I was, in Kosovo where we ran into some kids once, and they looked at us and they said, "You're all American soldiers," and I'm like, what do you mean? And he pointed to the flag. We all had the American flag on our sleeve, but he goes, "But you're not the same." And I looked around. I said, "Yeah, we are." And they looked around. He goes, "No." And so they had women, men, and you couldn't have made this diverse group. And it was just random of our medical team. We had an Hispanic, we had or a Latina, the Latinx as we say now. We had an Asian American, 2 Caucasians, me as a female, and another African American. And he said, but you're all different. And so it's like, no, we're all soldiers, because we didn't think of each other that way. We just were a medical team that was there in Kosovo to do a job. So I think that's how you get there, one at a time. And I think that's how the military really is. You one at a time. At West Point, you didn't choose your roommate. You were given a roommate. Some guy said, hey, my first roommate, when I walked in, one of my male friends was telling me, you know, it was like I saw my roommate and it was a black guy and my face fell. It's like, oh. But they became best friends because they were, you know, they learned. I think, so back to your point, I think changing hearts one at a time, you know, like you said, boiling the ocean, that's what it's going to take. Learning about people and being willing to have the difficult conversations. Everyone needs to drop their defenses and say, okay, let's talk about this. I might say something just like now. I had people say, well, I don't know what to say. Is it African American? Is it black? I mean, I use a term, one of my friends was mentioning a while back. He goes, yeah, I was saying, you know, Oriental people. He goes, we don't use that term anymore. He goes, well, I didn't mean anything by it. And, you know, and yes, people have to be willing now to say, okay, let's be willing to have a conversation. We're not going to necessarily get it right, but let's not, you know, go high and right initially if a person is coming from a place of really wanting to learn about others, because you're surprised when you learn about that, when you take the effort to try to learn about people one-on-one. And I think that's the great thing of our military. I know, Mike, you've seen that throughout your career. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Again, I always have to caveat, we're not perfect, but when you look at what we've done and accomplished compared to our society as a whole, we're pretty awesome in the military, I think. Can we get better? Always, in anything.
We have to. I mean, that's part of our makeup and our DNA is we have to improve daily. Or, you know, I like to say we're like a Labrador with a tennis ball. We can't help ourselves, and that's why veterans are awesome. That's why veterans in our community are awesome. That's why when you hire a veteran, your company, organization, corporation got better that day. It's super great. Couple of comments from the field. Kathy Gallowitz echoed your change one heart at a time. She's an awesome woman who recently published a book that is right here. She's been a big supporter for us, and it says the book is called Beyond Thank You for Your Service. So if you're out there, get this book and come to us if you need a way to find it. Jerry Schlanning, one of my great squad leaders and retired Sergeant Major, squad leader from the Arctic Paratroopers, gave you 2 thumbs up and said, you're really telling us things that are impactful. That's what I loved about serving. Our strength is our diversity, is what Jerry said. And then Chad Schertzinger, who's married to one of our awesome people, and they're about to have a little baby, mine and Ben, but he also just piped in and said, great comments, and truly appreciated it. I mentioned the Inspired Leadership Youth Summit, and if you're out there and you want to be involved and help us, one of the things that COVID-19 has allowed us, caused us, or made us do is to shift to a more online and virtual presentation of experience. And so we'll do the first one with the schools here in the Central Ohio and Greater Columbus area, but it's going to allow us to do these youth summits and get these kids speaking with police and with veterans and with role models and with mentors, coast to coast and north to south. So if you're out there and you want to be involved, then please reach out to us. There's either evolutions in life, Nadja, or there's transformations and revolutions. And if there's anywhere where we've seen that, it's in military medicine. And so I'd like you just to give a shout out to the Vietnam veterans and the Vietnam medics and the Vietnam corpsmen and the Vietnam lessons learned that we benefited, you and I and our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines benefited because of the Golden Hour and Air Medevac and those kind of things. And I'm always happy to, give the Korean War or World War II veterans, and if we have the greatest generation, we have the greatest forgotten generation, which is often our Vietnam vets. So I'm interested in how medicine evolved by, with, and through the Vietnam experience.
Yeah, and thanks, Mike, and you're probably going to regret that you did that, because once you get me started about Army medicine, we're done. Because I love, I mean, that's where I spent 40 years of my life. I absolutely love it. We've been around since 1775, and the evolution from, poultices and things that we did back then to now is insane. And when you specifically talked about our Vietnam veterans, absolutely awesome. And I want to say thank you to all of our Vietnam veterans, all of our veterans, but our Vietnam especially, because sometimes they were not necessarily given the respect and the appreciation that they deserved. From the medical standpoint, just think of the medevac. I mean, my husband's a dust-off pilot, and remember the comment, "Not till I have your wounded." All the different things that we learned about, and our PA program, our physician's assistance program, from those awesome Vietnam vets. A lot of them were combat medics in the vets, and that, in fact, the military, U.S. Army. We have PA programs in the United States now because of some of those medics that train there. I had some awesome ones when I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and that's when our PAs were warrant officers. And some of those crusty warrant officers taught me a lot as a brand new, captain. I was still in my family practice residency when I went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I remember, CW4 Chief Heckle, if he's still out there, who, really taught me about triage, setting up we had the sets, kits, and outfits, how everything's in a way. It goes, let's set it up the way you're going to use it. So, putting a set together to do a chest tube, putting a set together. I learned that from my PA, and he learned that during his time. He was in Vietnam. He was in the medic in the Vietnam, and in Vietnam, and several of them were there with me during that time frame. So I have a lot, just me personally, owe a debt of gratitude to our Vietnam era medics that became PAs during that time. And so again, so that's one of the contributions, is the physician assistant, what they learned, what they contributed during that time, and it's just taken off from there. And so
that's that attitude of innovation, the attitude of who's the best in the world at doing this, and how would they do it, and how can we learn from them? Hey, Darlene Atkins wants to know, what are important books that Dr. Nadja West would recommend?
Wow, and the last book I read is the best one. One that I just read, which was really a good book, was called The Most Beautiful Thing, by R. Cooper, and it was about an all-black crew team in an inner city in Chicago. That there was a crew member from, he was an investor that went to Penn and really wanted to open up this sport. And he was white, open up the sport to, other areas, to see if that could be a way for, people to come into, for inner city kids to get into college and things like that. And so that was one, and it was really great, because you hear these kids, where if you look from the outside looking in at inner city Chicago gangs, just the depth that these young kids had. One, wrote poetry, cared about their families, cared about each other, the things, the hopes and dreams they had. So that was really a good book, very inspiring about that. Another book that I just recently read, again from one of the folks I had the pleasure to work for on the Joint Staff, is General Dempsey's book. I mean, I read both of them. This first one and I'm blanking on the first book, but the second one is leaders, not a spectator sport for leaders, and then Radical Inclusion was his first one. Both of those are really good reads, in my opinion, on leadership, just vignettes on different qualities of leadership that are out there. And I could go on and on. There's several good books, but those are the ones that are kind of on my nightstand now. The one that I just got that was a recommendation was The Great Influenza, which is, was a New York Times bestseller, kind of about the pandemic. It's a little long, it's about 500 pages. But that's one that I'm going to kind of dive into, just to kind of get the perspective, on the influenza vaccine, on the influenza virus from 1918, kind of fast forward to what it can tell us today.
I know you've been in transition. I like the ing at the end of it, transitioning. And if someone wants to reach to you, is there a site or contact, or if not, if you want to reach out to Nadja West, you can go to us, the National Veterans Memorial Museum, at nationalvmm.org. I think it's /info or something. But go to our website and send a note, and we'll work a system, because you've been awesome today. And I know that there are a lot of men and women out there that have a zillion questions. And Brian Hensley says that General West spoke at Fort Stewart and MEDAC a few years back, and I really appreciated her message in the spirit with which she delivered it. So,
hey, Brian, thanks.
Very cool. So, any closing thoughts for our audience, or their friends that they're going to tell about this?
Well, what I'd like to say is, these are really uncertain and kind of scary times, right? I mean, there's so much going on, not only for the global pandemic, the systemic racism, how we're dealing with that, the global warming, just the things, that the implications that has, the change of our educational system. Look at, what we're looking at in the future of how is our education system going to, survive, a lot of our universities and schools. And then the political environment, we've got an election coming up, and just the environment globally. It can be really daunting, right? It can be really, just overwhelming in some cases. And so I would just tell people, hey, we're strong, right? We're stronger than all of this, if we work together. And it's one where, we hear, again, back from my faith tradition, be not afraid. It's easy to be fearful, but we're not alone. We can rely on each other, and especially veterans. We've got that spirit where there's nothing that we can't accomplish. I mean, that's just kind of what's in our DNA and what we are. And that's why I'm just so proud to have served. What an awesome opportunity. What an awesome opportunity. I mean, if I hadn't been adopted by an Army warrant officer, I probably wouldn't be here today. And so I just say we can get through this. We can all get through this together if we work together.
That's fantastic. So thank you, my friend, for joining us today, and really, full cards facing out game of go play fish, and where everybody wins, and speaking from your heart and from your experiences. You always make a difference in everybody's life, and we sure appreciate that. And with that, I'd like to pass over to Colonel Bill Butler and let him close us out and tell us what's coming up in the weeks ahead. Everybody stay safe. Have a great Labor Day weekend. And 1, hug someone you love. 2, it's National Veteran Suicide Month, and it's National Suicide Month. So call a veteran a day. Call someone every day in September and make sure they're doing okay. Excellent. You got that one ready, didn't you? Okay. So Bill, over to you. Thanks, Nadja. Great to see you, and really enjoyed visiting again with you.
Thanks, Mike. Right. You take care. Be safe and well.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. And man, thanks for sharing your inspirational story and your great lessons learned, and helping us separate a little bit of fiction from fact with regard to COVID. And thanks for your continued service for our veterans and our veteran community. This concludes our September virtual rally point, but I do want to just provide some quick updates on some upcoming events and invite everybody to participate in those. On Friday, September 11th at 12 o'clock, we'll conduct a virtual commemoration for Patriot Day with the City of Columbus and Franklin County. That same evening at 6:30, 18:30 for the veterans out there, the Columbus Symphony is going to be providing a free concert up on our roof for anybody who's interested in coming to that. Friday, September 18th, we welcome our latest temporary exhibit, We the People, Portraits of Veterans in America, by the acclaimed artist Mary White. And that same evening, we'll also have another free symphony concert in the rooftop area of the building. And then on Monday, the 21st of September, is our next Red Cross blood drive. So our nation's critically short of blood supply given the pandemic and all of the canceled blood drives. And this will be the fourth one that we've sponsored here at the museum. And we've got them planned all throughout the fall. So would encourage everybody to come participate if able. 1 pint of blood saves 3 lives. So it's very important for our community, and would encourage everybody to consider donating blood here, or if not here, at another blood drive location. Our next virtual rally point is going to be Saturday, October 3rd at 10 o'clock. And we're still waiting for confirmation from our guest. So stay tuned for that and watch our website and our Facebook page. We'll get that information out just as soon as we can. And then just as a reminder, the National Veterans Memorial and Museum is a nonprofit organization. We don't receive any funding from federal, state, or local governments. All of our programming and operational support comes from the generous donations, sponsorship, and memberships from people who believe in us and believe in veterans. So I would encourage everybody, if able, to become a member of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum and help support our programs to support veterans. And then we also want to take a moment to thank one of our corporate members, Lane Aviation, whose support as a member since 2019 has helped us bring great programs like Rally Point and now Virtual Rally Point to you. You can learn more about becoming a member online at nationalvmm.org. Everybody have a safe Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the last vestiges of summertime in the pleasant and mild weather, and everybody be safe. Thanks again, ma'am. Thank you again.
Thanks.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Wars aren't fought by countries. They're fought by people. Now, hear their stories in their own words. Honor their service in your own way. At the only museum in America that gives a voice to all our veterans. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new home of the brave.